Well, hey there. We are
Hey there, how are you?
good. We're live.
We're live and well and getting ready to kind of take off here. I feel like a rocket ship today.
Why?
It's like, well, everything is, I've been sitting, they've been tuning me up, they've been putting the fuel in me. The smoke is coming off the sides and everything else like that. And I'm in the countdown because I got here with you, 5, 4, 3. So I'm game,
Sure.
I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah, things are good on my way as ever, running a business and starting anything that's new. You're gonna be misunderstood often. People aren't gonna understand how you can do it all, how your bandwidth
Yeah.
has the ability to, hit a wide spectrum of things at one time. How I manage that versus focusing on one thing. And it's interesting because as I have these conversations with others, it's not that I'm multitasking and doing 50 things at one time. I am
Uh-huh.
very hyper focused on my goal here, and those that help catalyst and move it forward, that's unchanged. But what, working with you and just partnering with you and building different aspects to myself as a person and the growth of that has been exponential in my growth. So thank you for that, because now my intentionality each day is very thought out, but still focused on the overarching longer term vision here. So thank
Yeah, no, that's really, really, really good. One of the things that it comes up to me when you say multitasking is, uh, and there are people who do that, but they're not very effective. But what you do is you actually have your eye down on one task, but you do them in a very quick sequence,
exactly,
you
exactly.
know? So that's one thing I want to say. And then another thing that I want to say, just to kind of put it in, is this is Thursday. And Thursday is about what are we building together? So as we look in the background of everything that we do, this is a day of discovery.
Mhm.
This is a day where you're going to allow your intuition to come into play and whatever, and inside of the overall inquiry in the background of what are we building together. So what are we building together today?
Yeah, so I have a fun one for you.
Uh-huh.
Love to get your gauge on it. So there's often times where we as individuals will have different, a lot of jobs at one time, or we'll have a lot
Yes.
of roles at one time, whether it's being a parent at one moment, whether it's your actual corporate job, whether you're moving to entrepreneurialism, whether you have a daytime job and a nighttime job just to make ends meet until your reality catches up with your dream and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that I stumbled upon, and I've baited a couple people on, is when you have circumstances around you. For example, let's just take someone who works a day shift and a night shift. And,
Okay.
and in the day shift, they have a manager that always asks them, what tools do you need to do your job better? How are you doing? Are you all right? Is there anything you need? Right? Versus that same person having a manager in the night shift that says all the things you're not doing right and how you can do it better, and always being on top of that person. And
Mm-hmm.
still the same person, but yet if you ask that person in the daytime, tell me about your job, they're going to say they love their job, right? And they feel heard, they feel seen, they feel like they can accomplish anything. But if you talk to that same person at night, their reaction's a whole host of different, words that I probably can't even say here.
Exactly. Exactly. It's kind of like Peter Ducey when he asked Karine Jean-Pierre the other. Did you see this?
No.
uh, when they found the fourth or fifth tranche of documents in the White House, and
Yeah.
he asked the question, he said, "What four-letter word did the people
Oh,
say
yeah,
when
yeah,
they found
yeah. Yeah.
it?"
But
That'd be my night shift kind of thing. What four-letter word do I have to describe it? Yeah, I got it.
yeah. But, John, from your view, from your experience set, does that resonate? Do you feel that
Well,
makes sense?
actually it's profoundly resonant, and here's why. There's a principle that's involved that distinguishes out management from leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So management is granted. So you want to get granted. Management is granted by authority. So, if somebody who has the authority comes to me and says, John, you're the manager and you're in my my little group and everything, I come to you and I go, hey, Sammy, I'm your manager. There's nothing weird about it because it's been granted by authority. You recognize the authority. I recognize the authority. All God's children recognize the authority. Leadership, on the other hand, is granted by permission of the people being led. Now you take the day of, or the guy of the day shift and the night shift.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the day shift, his manager is actually leading. He's actually coming to the guy. He's saying, what do you need? What tools do you need? What do you need to do your job better? How do you like your job? He's actually dealing with his relationship with the guy. And so the guy actually has the experience of being a human being, being heard,
Mm-hmm.
being, his expression being appreciated, his work being appreciated. And if he has something to say, he's got a safe place to go to the person who is a manager, which is, by the way, a name tag, and granted by authority. Yeah, the guy's got it granted by authority, but he's soliciting the permission of the people that he is managing or leading.
Mm-hmm.
And they're responding to it. At least this guy is responding to it. In the other case, the guy is not managing a human being. He's managing a particle or a cog in a machine that if he could get that cog in the machine moving fast enough and oiled well enough, then it'll make the whole part of the machine that the manager is accountable for work better. But he's not managing a human being. So that's one thing. Management is granted by authority. Too bad about the night shift. That guy actually has the authority, but he's managing you not as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Second principle, hugely important, maybe should be first, is no matter what job you have, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in your position, you are in the relationship business first, and then you're in the day shift, night shift, whatever it is, business second.
Mm-hmm.
So if one was at a certain hotel and another's at another hotel, and the guy's doing a similar job and he's having a completely different expression,
Mm-hmm.
the guy who is his quote manager at the first one is soliciting his permission to lead, A, and B, knows that he's in the relationship business first, and then there's the work that gets done second.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that the manager in the second case either doesn't know or he's ignoring. Either way, too bad. And, too bad, but that's the deal, because no matter how you cut it, management is granted by authority.
Yeah, and if I recall when we were talking about this last week, was around a manager also being defined in time as well as efficiency. So the
Yes,
manager at
yes,
night, right, is only
yes.
thinking about efficiency, not actually thinking about the human being that actually can impact the efficiency by actually paying a little bit more attention. Whereas in the morning, it's definitely more toggled towards leadership, although they're under the title of manager, but they're really
Right.
from a leadership, not confined in time. And he's reproducing that trust and that build because it seems he or she in this case, right, is more of a work smarter, not harder, and understanding, the power of the whole, but understanding the importance of the parts.
Yeah, that's really good, Sammy. And another thing that it kind of brings up is this. Leadership is not a position, like management is a position.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is not a position, it's a way of being in the world.
Yep.
And so leadership can occur anywhere from the newest hire to come in to the person at the very top. We're praying and hoping that the person at the top is providing leadership, but in fact, they may be just being a manager at a higher level. It doesn't it depends on it. But leadership is a way of being, and it's a way of being related in partnership with. So, dot, dot, dot.
Mhm.
Are you concerned with your way of being related in partnership with dot, 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 such that it gets the best out of people?
I like that. I really like that because what it does is it narrows in on pulse checking yourself as a leader, a
Uh-huh.
manager and someone in authority, let's call it. Um, John, we've talked about this. I've taken a wide array of DISC assessments, leadership tests, all the things
Yes.
in
Yes.
between. And I had a wonderful conversation with someone recently on the output of that and the actual effectiveness of it, because if you're not having a good day or if you're having a good day, since they're not
Uh-huh.
values based, it changes the effectiveness and the results, right? I mean, your results can go down quite a bit, and I always felt that the results were, from a consensus standpoint, fairly accurate, plus or minus a little bit. But it always came down to, I don't want authority. I've stepped into it because it is called upon me to step into it, but I
Mhm.
drive through leadership. I drive through bringing others along, and I just happen to have a title on me because that's what's required at the different levels in corporate America. But I don't
Yeah.
aspire for authority. I don't need to.
Yeah. Yeah, you're saying a lot once again. To go back to the idea of the things like the disc profile and the various other Myers-Briggs and so on
Yeah.
like that. The interesting thing about them is that what they are is a diagnostic. So they don't really do anything except say what you were. This is what you were yesterday. This is what you said you were when you took the test, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what really matters is a 3-word question that the manager could be asking the people that they're managing.
Mhm.
And the question is, how are you? How are you? In other words, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on with you? And then in your illustration this morning about the day shift, night shift, I say that that's what the day shift guy is doing. He's coming around and he's saying a version of, how are you? How can I help you? What can I provide for you?
Mhm.
That sort of thing. By the way, that's not natural. You get taught that.
And you learn.
What's natural is do the work.
Of course. Yeah, and I'll go one further here, right? And expand on what you said on how are you. The one further for me, and I learned this from someone that I really look up to as well. And he goes, "Well, if you ever ask anybody, are you good?" The response is normally, "Yeah, I'm good." Even if you're not good, because it's a
Right.
natural, automatic X plus Y equals Z kind of wiring in everyone's brains. So to break that fixed connection point, he said, "Well, hold on a minute, from 0 to 10, where are you at right now?"
Yep.
And
That is so good.
it's
Tell
great.
me where you're at right now. Is
Tell me
yeah,
where you're
like
at.
where are you? What are you coming from? What's going on with you?
Yeah.
Don't give me the weather report. Tell me what's really happening.
Yeah, and what's great about it is it's not getting someone so uncomfortable. All you're asking for is a number. Right? And
Yeah.
I didn't think about it until I started to apply it to a bunch of athletes and said, "Look, if you're having a bad day or you're having a great day, just text me a number, because we have that understanding now. So if you're a 2, we're probably gonna have a phone call, right? And I'm gonna ask, tell me more. I'm not gonna have any opinion. I'm not gonna be biased. It's a safe space here. But if you're a 10, I'm gonna say, well, let's celebrate. What are we celebrating? Right? To celebrate the little wins. So I'm hitting each side of the spectrum here, and I'm taking the how are you, but also learning how to connect at that next level right? Where someone feels seen.
Yeah, as seen and heard.
Mhm.
What you were, how are you is literally saying to a person, I'm stopping my life and I'm going to listen to what you have to say. And if you don't do that,
Mhm.
it's an insult. And believe me, a 3-year-old child will pick up that insult.
Oh, yeah.
So, so if you go to the automatic one from column B response, how are you? Fine. You've actually, killed the whole area or space for listening. The job of a manager and the real job of a leader is to listen.
Mhm.
The entire abstraction around it is listening others into existence as something good. The job of a leader, what you get paid for, is to listen people into existence as something good. And believe me, people don't. They listen people into existence as a jerk, as any number of 4-letter expletives, as any number of anything, merely because they want to feel like I'm great and they're not.
Yeah.
Stage 3 to stage 2. But leadership begins at stage 4, which is listening others into existence as a benefit.
Mhm. So I'll pick on this, and let's go left a little bit. This will be fun.
Going left, going left, my favorite direction.
So most people would say right. I said no, 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 we're going left. All right, so I'll have one personal experience that
Mhm.
I've had, and it's interesting because you and I are we're exchanging different thoughts, right? We're coming to the table, we're building something together, but we have the aperture and the wherewithal to want to have this discussion to build together. We are making the intentional choice to be here, right? Sometimes
We're making the intentional choice to
to be
be
here.
here unrehearsed.
Yeah, of course.
We're not booking this out in addition, and we're not saying, well, we're going to talk about
Yeah,
this and we want to get these points.
yeah,
We're just
free
talking.
flowing. And in particular, I can just put myself in others who'll watch this, whether it's tomorrow or 2 years from now. They're going to say,
Mm-hmm.
well, John and
Mm-hmm.
Sam, I love it. I love your energy. I like how you connect the dots at the front end of this. Well, how do I apply this knowledge? There's one thing to give knowledge, there's another to help someone apply the knowledge and action it. So, for example,
Okay.
okay, you have a circumstance where you're in your environment. You don't get to choose your boss. Your boss is
No.
there. Now, you have feelings and sentiments towards how that interaction happens or doesn't happen or whatever it may be, but your controllable is your response to a lot of things and your ability to figure out how to move the pieces or to have the conversation that may not feel comfortable. Okay. So let's apply the knowledge here. I'll tell you something that I personally did. At the beginning part of my career, I was trying to find my voice where I didn't come off as too bull in a china cabinet. I was trying to be tailored. I was trying to understand the political side of the game. I'm trying to grow and catapult up the ladder, right? I want to know my place, but I want to show the eagerness and passion for what I'm doing. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? And it's sometimes at the forefront where maybe my natural ability will just go into the room and say, let's talk about it. But sometimes you have to learn about how others receive that information and meet them where they're at as well, which
That's right.
will prove to be a strong outcome in terms of applied knowledge and result than otherwise you would have had. So one of the things I thought about was, okay, how do I force the conversation without it feeling aggressive? But I don't feel like I have my voice yet, or I haven't crystallized it. So what did I use? I used the mid-year and full year review. And we had one question on there. Do you have
Hmm.
all the tools you need to do your job well? Common HR question that they put in the performance reviews at certain Fortune 100 companies, because they want to then take that metric and extrapolate it as we have a workforce that's fully equipped, prepared, and capable, you
Of
know?
course. Of course.
So I actually said no. I had the courage to circle no. That is the automatic, you always say yes. And if you have a problem, you go talk to your manager. No, no, no. This time I said no. And the
Hmm.
reason that is important is that goes on the record. You actually sign that during the review process. It is part of your HR organizational development planning cycle. It comes up in the reviews on the executive board. So what I did was I was very intentional to drive the conversation, not just with the manager, but with his boss and his boss's boss because of the process. So that was process that I leveraged to drive the conversation. And let me tell you something, it actions something very quick. Before we even had the meeting, he came up to me and said, I want to talk about the tools you don't have. Like, this is super important, Sam. If you don't feel like you have the tools, we need to talk about this now. And there's one thing to have that conversation. Great. There's another that after that meeting, he asked me to change my answer to yes. Okay. So at that intersection, I had a very, very important decision to make. Do I keep it at no and drive something that's bigger than myself? Because I can guarantee that a majority of the organization feels that they don't have the tools or they're overwhelmed or whatever it may be. And do I become the sacrificial lamb for this? But drive that, I can do it, I can handle it, I'm young, ambitious, and capable. Or do I have an authentic build with my manager that's receptive enough where I'm going to get the tools, then I can then give it to others, right? So I was trying to figure out which way to pivot on this one. And I ended up doing both. I ended up building with him, but I explained to him why I wanted to say no for the broader organization and my peers that I know don't have the voice and courage that I do yet, but I want to give them the chance to vocalize it. So I'm going to say no with the hope that we actually can have a focus group to talk about very pointedly what we need or should do for consideration. You see those words, very intentional, for consideration, proposal for
Yeah.
consideration. So that was my personal experience to force the conversation at a multitude of different authority levels.
Yeah. I really like that. That's really it's an extremely effective share. And what I want to go back to is the question, do you have the tools that you need?
Mm-hmm.
If you took the point of view that that is actually an authentic question, since it is the question that they put on the questionnaire,
Mm-hmm.
then the question is, am I going to behave like a sycophantic 3 or 4 year old who's trying to get the uh, kind of the please, I want to please my mommy, I want to please my daddy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens at performance reviews is people go into it who are children and they are pleasing their mommy and daddy. You went into it as a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So going into it as a partner, he actually ended up, and his boss and his boss's boss ended up with someone who, no matter what the position is, was displaying leadership and partnership. Leadership and partnership are so co-joined together that you cannot ever get them apart.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
There's no such thing as leadership without partnership and partnership without leadership. They actually are part and parcel of the same concept. So the question that you saw was a question that triggered partnership. And while it took courage to do it, because the thrown way of going is please my mommy or please my daddy,
Mm-hmm.
you said, no, actually, if I was a partner, this is a valid question and I'm going to actually deal with it like it's a valid question. Like somebody got paid, some entity got paid a lot of money to derive this one question so that this one question could inform the manager. That requires partnership on the basis of the person who's responding to the question. And when somebody goes, it's like, how are you doing? And they say, fine, they're not being your partner.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what threw me, right, was my gauge, my barometer on my manager's authenticity to
Uh-huh.
sit at the table to truly partner
Mm-hmm.
because of the last question asked after a very, what I thought was fruitful conversation. And that
Mm-hmm.
was, so are you going to
Oh,
change your answer to yes?
yeah, that's really interesting. It's like, survival never goes away. So no matter how comfortable people are, no matter how solid they are, no matter how wealthy they are, no matter whatever, scratch them, and the first thing that will come up is a form of survival.
Of course.
And it's really interesting. So he did partner, 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 appreciate, appreciate, appreciate. You're heard, you're heard, you're heard. That was useful. That was useful. That was useful. And then survival comes up on the other hand. And now will you change your now will you change your answer? No, not until things change.
And it's interesting because my estimate has not backed in data. This is just my estimate, my approximation, my opinion.
Mhm.
That most people would change it to yes because now they feel like they've got one
Oh,
on their manager.
well, and oops, now's a chance for me to come back and do both things. One is I gave the information and now I get to please my mommy or dad.
Yeah. And it's funny you say, the mommy and daddy, because I've had these conversations with others in terms of how do you control your controllables. And especially, John, when I was in a highly matrixed organization, that conversation, that question doesn't go up to the CEO of, a big conglomerate. It does not. There's so many levels in between. But in a flat organization, it sure as hell does.
It
It,
does.
it even may go to the board of directors. So you also, for others, like they have to understand, well, what does your organizational footprint look like, right? What does the structure look like? What are your process? Ask for it. Don't just assume. Be inquisitive to it because then that will also change how you pivot and improvise. Because if you're in a highly matrix organization and you put no to that answer, it may go a couple levels up, but it may not ever even go to your segment CEO. So then you need to find champions on your behalf, sponsors, figure out how you may move horizontal or vertically, how you may move to another business group to garner the right type of partnership. And that's okay. You're allowed to do that. That's awesome. But that's a different set of outcomes because understanding the process, understanding your base state versus in a flat organization, typically there's not a lot of vertical up and there's not as much horizontal, moves as well. So a lot of times people feel stuck in place. So they try to manage the one-to-one. And I hear often, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to the principal's office. We are grown men and women. What do
Mhm.
you mean go to the principal's office? And then I'm saying, well, hold on a minute. Let me be radically candor here and say, well, boo-hoo us, shame on us because we're boo-hoo us. What about the fact that we assume that that CEO knows it? What Why don't we drive the conversation? So shame on us if we're saying boohoo the principal's office and that person may have no clue what's going on because some of their executive team or managers have compartmentalized so many aspects of it, but yet we're thinking the CEO gets it. In some cases they do, but I always kind of take the ownership aspect, the accountability of driving the action and not assuming an executive leader knows,
Yeah,
never been in my behavior.
yeah, no, that's totally understandable. Regardless of whether it's flat or whether it's matrixed. Next level up, all I can do is deal with the data that's been fed to me.
Mm,
So you're a data point. Now, if my manager has so many data points, like asking the question, do I get what I want? And the manager is managing 50, 70 people,
mhm.
and 50 to 70 people are saying, no, I don't. That manager is toast because all that the manager's manager gets is data. And so they're gathering data, and why the guy said, well, are you willing to change your answer now, is because he wanted to change that data point.
Of
But
course.
ultimately, doesn't matter, flat or matrix. What I'm getting is I'm gathering data, and I'm actually making my moves on the basis of data.
Mhm.
Unless I happen to be the kind of leader who
Mhm.
walks around and talks to people. If I'm the kind of guy that walks around and talks to people and gets them to say something more than fine, everything's okay, and pleasing,
Mhm.
then I have an opportunity. I'm not only gathering data, but I'm gathering the experience of the data.
Yep.
And really, 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 it's all about the experience of the data is what makes for effectiveness.
Yeah. And, taking ownership of this. I mean, performance development, you have to take accountability for it. You can't put it in someone else's hands, but
Mhm,
understand that someone can be a catalyst for you, no doubt,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
They can put
mhm,
the right projects, in front of you, no doubt. But at the
mhm,
end of the day, your hunger, your appetite, your all in, lean in, fail often, forward, all of the above here. I mean, that's a critical component because I guarantee that others will take note. And if you're not given those opportunities, some others may question, well, why is that person not? Right? Which then may garner something new for you. But I've always believed in being a champion on my own behalf too. I don't just look for others to do it for me. I'm excited about where I'm headed in life. Even when it's
mhm,
tough, even when I have
mhm,
to have the
mhm.
hard conversations, even when John, this happened maybe less than 2 times in my life where the emotional charge was so intense, and I was mad, I was sad, I was disappointed, I was happy that I was able to have a conversation all at the same time where my body actually reacted, and I couldn't
Mhm.
control it. Like, I actually had a teardrop from my face. Everyone thinks I'm so tough. I freaked out. I'm like, "What is this? Like, I barely do this anyways." Like, what's going on? And, the manager was just like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I have no idea." I said, "But we need to have a conversation because this isn't right. Because I can take on a lot. I'm an athlete. I know how to compartmentalize. I know how to do other things, but I'm gonna tell you something now. If I feel that this is a majority, there's a lot of data points that suggest what I extrapolated or my assessment is correct. Oh, I'm coming full force because I'm going for the championship."
Yeah, well, and not only that, but you're coming out of the most authentic part of who you are, which is your experience.
Mhm.
So you gathered all the data points, you absorb all the data points, you have the ability to handle and manage
Yeah.
an enormous amount of input,
Mhm.
and an enormous amount of input, positive and negative, so to speak,
Mhm.
and still be able to perform. That's what it is to be an athlete. That's what it is to be a performer, is to be able to perform in the face of negative input.
Of course.
But is that negative input, did it trigger something or trip you into a place where all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm overwhelmed by an experience? The experience is what you've actually got to pay attention to.
100%. And the learning I had in that moment was
Mm-hmm.
I had never experienced that before, so I wasn't prepared. So I
Right.
I went a little bit into survival mode, um, but then I came out of it and I immediately wrote down about 3 to 5 things that I wanted to say that I didn't say, and I used that as a comeback with later upon reflection. But what it did was it guided my compass to say in every interaction I have, like, what are my 2 to 3 things that are so important that need to be said? And bring it with me. I don't even care if it's a notepad. I don't care if you rehearse it the day before. It made me understand what preparation really looks like because preparation prepares you for those times that you didn't expect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the thing, just to kind of bring it back and kind of get ourselves grounded in what we're talking about. The background inquiry is, what are we building together? So there you are in your conversation. The experience becomes overwhelming that you are brought to after all these data points are brought up.
Mhm.
But you are brought to an experience unexpected, actually almost unprecedented.
Mhm.
The moment of learning occurs there. That's where the gap opens up, where we don't become just the ordinary jerk that we normally are, but we actually can learn something and we can impart something.
Mhm.
We can share something. I say that in that moment, you allowed a contribution to yourself and you made a contribution to the person that you were interacting with. And
Yeah.
that's what relationship is about. It's allowing for the unexpected and then sharing from there.
Yeah. And it goes to something that is very important for someone like me, right? In
Mm-hmm.
terms of the all in, genuinely care for others, want to understand someone to their core, being very intentional with every interaction I have in my life, John. I had managers come up to me and say, "You made me better."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's eureka to me. You want to know why? Because for that moment or that set of circumstances that they've been hardened, because the higher up you go, the thinner the air gets. Sometimes you lose your own pulse. Sometimes you get so stuck in the minutia and the political jargon and the process. I'm not giving a cop out. Trust me, I am not giving an excuse for any executive leader who wants to just drive with, an authoritative nature. But what I am saying is, when I say control your controllables, you can control how you react and respond and action and consistently do it day in and day out. Because if you're truly aspiring to be a leader, it doesn't matter if there's someone from a title perspective above you or people that have titles below you. If you want to close the gap and drive cultural change for innovation, growth, and driving context versus control, right? Letting everybody understand the environment they're in to be able to perform at the levels that they can get there in the pathways that they deem most appropriate versus you have to do it this process. You have to do it for process sake because we're a big company and we need to have a record, right? When you start to kind of put all of these things together, it really fundamentally change and it brings a mirror. And if I can be someone's mirror for 1 second, 1 hour, just like I am a mirror for myself, then I'm doing something right, John.
You're more than doing something right. You're providing leadership. All of that stuff that you were talking about the rules, the dogma, the way that it's done, what's in the manuals and everything else, those are all management distinctions. Not one of them is a leadership distinction. And many of them are designed to suppress leadership. But leadership is something that is wanted and needed and called for at every level, in every moment, every day. And you have the birthright as a human being to be a leader because you are, if you look at it really closely, you are leading your own life.
Of course.
So
That's
if you
the big one.
start with you are leading your own life, you are a person who has the ability to share and provide leadership, which is an ecology or an environment
Mhm.
for people to lead their own lives in a way that they thrive.
100%.
And just because we're in some kind of corporate matrix, it's wanted and needed and called for that there is an ecology or an environment of people being able to thrive inside of the matrix. Management will not provide that. Management is granted by authority.
Mhm.
Leadership is granted by permission of those being led. And so the permission of those being led is a function of creating an ecology or an environment around you. So if you have a manager who is just doing management and is suppressing you,
Mhm.
is the guy who is the night shift manager, so to speak. Your job as a leader is to create an ecology around everybody around you and everybody around the manager. Don't worry about the manager. Worry about getting everybody else into an idea that they too actually are leaders and by their birthright and by the function of their leading their own lives. So come on, let's get it done. Let's get it together and let's do it together.
Sounds very tribe-like.
Well, it is.
I know, I know.
Human beings are tribal.
Yeah, no, you're right. So, let's do this, alright? What are your 1 to 2 things that you would, tell me or tell someone who wants to perform at the highest level, wants to drive change, but always meets resistance? What are the 1 or 2 things that you would give advice, recommend, action, whatever you think?
I would say that meritorious relationship is the key.
Define meritorious for me, please.
That there's a benefit for you and a benefit for me every time we interact.
Okay.
So we have a relationship, and our relationship is based, and it's not based on trust, it's not based on love, it's not based on anything
Mhm.
but merit.
Okay.
And so every time I see you, I feel like I've been contributed to. Every time you see me, I have to leave you with the idea of what's you're responsible for in my relationship is what people are left with after you're gone. I have to leave you with merit. Merit, 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 because there will become a time when we hit a speed bump. And when we hit the speed bump, I don't want a divorce. I want a conversation called how can we actually work our way through this and build around this so that we can continue to create merit for ourselves and the people that we touch.
I
So
love it.
meritorious relationship is the key.
I love it. I mean, yeah. I mean, I would have gone a different way a little bit.
Hmm.
I agree with your assessment and the building together.
Hmm.
But for me, it's all about, I use my acronym PAIN: prepare, arm, improvise, and navigate, right?
Uh-huh.
And I
Uh-huh.
I ingrain that in everything I do, but it's always rooted in authenticity and
Hmm.
being extremely intentional. When I'm talking to you, John, you have 150% of my attention, my mindset, everything, because I only have so many interactions, only so much time in this world. And it goes to your concept of building, but every interaction that I have, it's a part of my fabric, whether I want it to be or not. And I will not
Hmm.
spend
Hmm.
any time wasting that time. I
Yeah,
may
that's really just being accountable for the quality of your relationships.
Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't have said it like you said it, but it shares quite a similar sentiment, and building together and helping others feel seen. Because if someone feels seen and, to your point, heard, they may take that step, that leap, and that may be a game changer for a whole host of other things that otherwise would never happen because they didn't have the courage or environment or space to excel in that manner. So for me, it's so important. All this leadership and performance development, it's people kind of just say it and they just put these programs on, to check the box that they've done programming.
Especially in HR, yeah.
Gosh, but man, I'm gonna tell you, John, I want to really empower, impact, inspire, motivate, action, just everyone to step into their capacity of greatness. It's so simple.
Yeah. Wow, really well said. I was afraid you were going to go a different way and say empower and and impact. Oh, how great the organization is or anything. No, to step into their own birthright, their own capacity for leadership and greatness.
Oh yeah. It starts the everyone thinks of the whole, right? But it is
Hmm.
truly a sum of the parts. And if you have something that is not fitting anymore, it really can disrupt the whole. So it takes some time and reflection to understand, well, why? Tell me more,
Hmm.
right? Let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's go below the surface. So I'm excited. I think we're going to build on this one, and I guarantee some people are going to have some comments about it. Probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you're right. Well, this is foundational.
Yeah.
This is the real deal. If you want to be talking about leadership versus management and effectiveness versus efficiency and space versus time, and actually building something,
Yeah.
like what are we building together, uh, and who are our partners in the building it together. This is that kind of a conversation. So very useful conversation, Sammy.
Yeah.
Thank you for this.
Absolutely, and it's something that I'm passionate about, so much so that I've developed and currently developing, as you know, right, a program to do stuff at a corporate level, even though my heartstring is really at the athletic student athlete side. Well,
Yeah,
they're corporate athletes, right? So hold
that's
on
right.
a minute, let me challenge my fixed nature of what athletics is. And it actually morphed into something beautiful. And I'm so excited. And I can't wait to bring you in on it because you're coming. You don't have a choice. You're coming. So,
Well, the thing that you say about athletics, we've both been an athlete and so on like that. But I'll tell you, the difference between really good and elite is between years.
yep.
And that's the kind of athlete that we're actually working with. We're working with somebody who is intellectually or mentally, or however you want to say it. They may not be that person who uh, has been blessed to have a particular athletic point of view, or participate or compete that way, but
Yeah.
they actually have the ability here. That's your birthright.
Yeah.
Your birthright for leadership is between your ears.
Yeah. I well said. I can't really value out on that one because I think that's a eureka. And John, I just enjoy talking to you. It's funny. I have people tell me all the time, man, you guys go back and forth and it's you rehearse. Like you have to rehearse, right? And I'm like, no, we really just build together. And if it's great, fantastic. If it's exceptional, fantastic. But it's
Well,
never bad.
your first thing, Sammy, when you talk about P is, preparation.
Mhm.
You spent your entire life preparing for this conversation.
Yeah, you're right.
I have spent my entire life preparing for this conversation, and that's why the conversation goes as it goes, because we meet at the crossroads and say, okay, we're now beginning to discover and examine what's going on here. And
Of
we
course.
just speak from the intuition of the moment.
Yeah, and we're not afraid to fumble. It's fun when it actually happens.
Ah,
Why not?
that's where you learn. That's
I
where you
know.
learn.
I keep telling people they don't want to listen to me. But hey, what do I know?
Yeah.
What do I
What do
know?
we know? Yeah, exactly. You know what? You talk to those. Real smart guy a couple of thousand years ago said, speak to those who have ears to hear.
Good point. Point ever well made. And with that, I think we're going to sign off. I appreciate
Okay.
it ever, and I look forward to next week too.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you. I can't wait.
All right.